Rod and Mike, take one.
You know, back in the end of 2013, we had a studio here of about, 150 odd people.
They were nice people. They
were nice people. Tranquil days. We were working on new IP for Microsoft. We were working on something in the third-person space. We were working with Unreal Engine 4. Sometime, I guess it was right around the end of 2013, we were coming up on the end of pre-production on the game we were working on. And sort of very suddenly, we were given this choice as a studio. We could continue working on the IP that we were working on now, which everyone was very invested in, having been working on it at that point for almost 2 years. Or we were told Microsoft was in the process of acquiring the rights to Gears of War, and our studio, if we wanted it, would be chosen to be the new developer. That was a pretty big deal for the studio. Not very many people knew about it at the time because everything was still very kind of hush-hush and confidential. But there were a few of us at the kind of studio leadership level that had to think this over and kind of come back with a response to the folks in Redmond. You don't work on something for 2 years without being invested in it, and so there was certainly people who were invested in what we were working on, but at the end of the day, the opportunity to take on Gears was kind of a no-brainer. We were just very well positioned at that time for it, having already been working with the technology base, having already been working in the third-person space. I think the fact that we were so far of our way through pre-productions means we had gone through multiple demos. We'd actually done a short teaser at E3 that year. And I think it had just built up some confidence at the executive level that this was a team that could execute and could run with a vision and really develop it. And that we had the technical chops and the art chops to do something cool. So we decided to jump on Gears. And that was probably, December. And then in January, we talked to the team about it. We had a big team meeting in this room, actually, announced to the team that we were going to be the new home of Gears of War.
Do you think Microsoft purchased Gears with this studio in mind? Were they thinking, let's just buy it and we'll slot somebody into development on this thing?
I know that they took very seriously that they wanted to find the right developer for it. Whether they bought it with us in mind, I can't actually answer that. I know that they were quite keen on having it done internally and making sure that we could retain kind of control over the quality of the product, and as an IP that we were going to kind of treat this thing with the respect that Epic would.
So on my side of that was basically I'd been working at 2K for a while. I had just gave my notice to 2K and said that I was leaving, and so then I phoned a friend of mine at Microsoft and I said, hey, I just left 2K. I want to start my own studio. Do you want to come with me? And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, I just quit 2K and I'm going to start my own studio. You want to come with me? And he goes, you left 2K? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, we're thinking about buying Gears. If you're free, that'd be kind of a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, I've got nothing. Would you want to work on Gears again? I'm like, of course. The funny thing is that I think that Friday...
It all happened very quickly, yeah.
You guys announced on the Friday?
We announced it, yeah. So we talked to the team. We were standing up at the front of this room and we told them, kind of like bad news, good news story, I guess. Bad news is the project that we've been working on for the last 2 years is not moving forward. And then kind of the next slide was, but we're taking on Gears of War. And it was kind of this shock gasp, and then there was this cheer that actually started at the front of the room, went all the way to the back. And then the next slide was, oh, and by the way, Rod Ferguson's going to be joining the studio on Monday.
Exactly. This was Friday, and like 2 days later.
So this is Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah.
It must have been like a weird mixture of morale, because I'm sure there were so many people that were really heart set on that new IP, and people would be like, Gears? I guess I can learn to love Gears? What was the mood like then when Rod walked in?
I think, like I said, it would be lying if I didn't say that there were people who were not disappointed or just heavily invested. You can't work on something for a year and a half, 2 years without getting invested in it. So as excited as they were about Gears, you still have to go through this kind of period of almost like mourning or getting over loss of something that you've been working on. But honestly, it was pretty quick because we were within, I would say, a week and a half, 2 weeks of Rod's arrival and kind of the announcement of us taking on Gears. Everybody on this team was being redeployed against Ultimate Edition. We kind of had a very clear vision for what that game was going to be, and we could easily deploy 100 people to work on that on day one.
I mean, if it wasn't for the Gears acquisition, would that other project have continued forward? Or was it a cancellation of the project and a replacement of Gears? Or how exactly did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be speculating to try and predict the future in the games industry more than a year or two. It was presented to us as a choice. We could keep moving forward with that IP, or we could take on Gears. And so ultimately it was our decision as a studio to take on Gears.
I'd been away from Canada for 15 years. I've been away from Microsoft for 10 years, and I've been away from Gears for 3 years. So it was like this triple homecoming, coming back to all three of these things, which was awesome. And yeah, I didn't, when I left Epic, I thought that was the last I'd ever see of Gears, and so to have an opportunity to work on it again, it was amazing. And so what I really enjoyed was when I came in, like I wasn't here the Friday the announcement happened, and it seemed like most people got over it on the weekend. When I got in, I came into a lot of enthusiasm, and that's what I've tweeted and talked about the fact that when I first showed up, that basically it was the same sort of energy that Epic had back at Gears 1. I mean, there was Gears of War on every monitor, and people were really excited, and there's just, you could feel the enthusiasm. Where I'd come from, when I left Epic after working on it for 7 years. I mean, people still loved Gears, but you could tell it's been something they've been working on for 7 years. And so this way, like, the excitement was palpable, and it was really easy to get out of bed in the morning to come in and work with these people who were so excited to make Gears of War.
What did you worry about coming into the studio? Did you think people were going to have to come to you for every question? Do you think they wanted
No, I demand that. No, I demand that. That's in the contract, actually.
Do you think like they were propelled to be more conservative with you coming into the studio?
No, I mean, my fear was just the Gears of War was part of the DNA of Epic, and so there's such high quality staff at Epic and team members, and it was such a collaborative process, when you think of Chris Perna and Lee Perry and Cliff and all these people who are just so integral to making it happen, that having to pick up that torch kind of as the only one of the people from that group and then bringing it here, it was a concern of how we're going to carry it forward. And a lot of the excitement was what can we do how do we do it differently, right? And so there was like, everything that everybody was doing initially was, I haven't seen verticality in Gears, here's a really vertical level, and I haven't seen this, and I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen this. And that's when I kind of had to go like, okay, whoa, we have to stop, and let's do Gears 101, and let's go back to basics and figure out what it takes to make a Gears experience. And as I've been saying, let's do it right before we do it different. So we focused heavily on, are we being true to Gears? Is what's the parity between this and the previous games? And we spent many, many months on just, does it feel like even Gears 3? Can we make a Gears 3 experience? And then once we got to that, then we're like, okay, now take the blinders off, and now let's talk about innovation.
Do you ever have moments where it's like, you guys are going down a path and you realize like, oh, Cliffy B would have hated this, but we're going to do it anyway?
No, I don't know if there's any specific design decision we made that I knew that Cliff would hate. But it's just interesting because, like I said, it was such a collaborative, in terms of how Chris being such a monster guy. And early on, I snuck some concept art out to Chris at Epic to say, like, dude, this is what do you think? And he would send me back these really glowing things that made me feel really good, too, because it would kind of be like, this feels good to me, but what does somebody who's out of it feel like? And Chris would send me these really positive emails, and so I feel, and bolstered by that. So that was really great to have that kind of feedback. And then we also tapped in like people like, Jim Brown, who is so important to multiplayer, and being a lead multiplayer designer, like we had him come out multiple times and visit with the team, and he actually would sit in the lab and work on a level for we would say like, hey, would you fix the layout in here? And he would work till 2 a.m. on a visit here and in the lab, moving cover and adjusting sight lines and stuff, and then the next morning going like, this is what I would do, and that kind of stuff. So, that's the great thing, is the passion around Gears still lives on even at Epic, and they've been really nothing more than super generous with their time with us.
You want to talk about just the research the team here did for Gears? What was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first week, people are kind of, what are we supposed to do? Like, Rod's walking in, he's trying to find where the bathroom is and where his office is, and people are showing up for work on Monday, and they're asking, like, what are we supposed to do? And so what we had them do was we had them play all 3 games. We had them read the books, had them go online and go to the Gearspedia and read up all about the universe. And we did trivia, actually. So remember the first team meeting, Rod went up there, he had a bunch of prizes, and then he went through some arcane Gears trivia. Anybody that could answer that would get a t-shirt or get a mug or something like that.
Right.
So a lot of it was just about immersing the team in the Gears of War universe and just getting them up to speed. A ton of people were already fans of the franchise, but they may not have been as deeply knowledgeable as they need to be as a developer of the franchise.
We actually had a lore team that went in, and we had a couple of writers who went in and sort of took apart the lore and went through every novel and every comic book, and we ended up sort of creating our own internal reference that if they ever needed something, you wanted to know something about the game, there was a place to go look it up. And so it was just this sort of internal guide by which what was the Berserker again, and how do I think about that? And it was really useful to have that basis and just having, I tap into it now where I'm just like, Bonnie Bonnie, what was the name of the thing? Because she's like gone through every line of every book. I tap into her as well.
Yeah.
And Bonnie is?
Oh, Bonnie Gimont, she's a narrative producer, and she's helping on Gears 4 in terms of wrangling the scripts and working with us on the story. And so, but she's, as a writer herself, she's been really great in terms of dealing with things like the combat chatter system and working on things like just keeping the lore consistent.
So Rod, I'm curious, like working with a new team and seeing Gears from a new angle, do you learn anything new about the franchise that you didn't know before, or appreciate anything new that you didn't appreciate before?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was really interesting to me is when we actually brought analysis to the Gears of War. Like, you know, a lot of what we did back at Epic was sort of organic, and it sort of came out of just what was fun. Like one day Lee would say, I gave the boomer a shield and it's awesome, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, and you know, I wasn't part of his process, but to come here and to work with the team, the designers here, and they talk about like, oh, hey, we've reverse engineered the entire Locust Lambent army, and did you know they're made up of mirrors and pinners and flushers, and this is, and you're like, oh, okay. Like I hadn't thought about it in that way, and so it really was sort of that the dissection of the franchise was really interesting, and how to think about the gameplay mechanics. And it was something too that, like, one of the big things I did early on is we created pillars for the team and went and said, hey, as a level designer, these are the things you need to be thinking about, and as a team, these are the things you need to be thinking about. And to be able to write those pillars, I had to go in and kind of break everything apart myself and say, like, hey, it's all about fronts, and it's all about flanking routes, and it's all about, like, you had to think about, like, what are the elements that go into it. Because like I said, initially what we struggled was with the core, because everybody was like, oh, the core, we all know the core, let's talk about what's beyond the core. And I'm like, I haven't seen core yet. Like, until you, I get that you think it's easy, but and it's true. It took a while. And even the parodies, those little things about Gears you don't, like, it's one of the things when I play and I go like, I don't hear the click, click, click of when I'm almost out of bullets. And they're like, oh, right. And then you're like, oh, and you know, like, there's little secret numbers that are hidden inside all the algorithms that if you don't know about them, you don't see them. And so there's those sorts of things where, like, don't forget this. And so it's been just getting that sort of core feeling has been the most important.
Is there anything maybe like from the previous project that some specialties that were carried over?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Some of the stuff we were doing with adaptive animation and dynamic animation, maybe you saw some of that earlier today with some of the juvies jumping over the wall and that kind of thing. For sure, some of that technology that we were building has carried forward into Gears 4.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of where the wind system came out of. Is like there's a bunch of different things that they were doing for the other game that had not really wind. They actually had some big water tech and that's one of the things when I said we looked at water, we looked at wind, we looked at what would we double down on, and settled on wind. But there was a bunch of stuff too, just based on the type of game they were making, which is sort of a kind of a more high tech game.
Don't say too much.
I'm not going to say too much, but just enough. But it was just one of those. It was one of those things where it felt like, as I was telling you, like, now that we know that we're building for this is the foundation of a saga, we could look at a lot of the high tech stuff and say, you know what, for our 3 people in the woods at night story, this doesn't make sense, but man, could this be applicable in the next game or the game after that? And so that was one of the things where we were really comfortable going like, oh, okay, because we know we're hoping there's going to be more, then it's easier to push it off to the next one.
Does it feel different working on the Gears of War franchise from a third-party studio perspective to a first-party?
No, there's not a big difference between the first and third relationship, because really when we were at Epic, we felt like we were first. I mean, the distance was a big part of it, probably the biggest part of it. And because we were Epic and we were in charge of the engine, I think we had a little bit more of foot stomping power. We had a little bit more like, we don't want to do it this way, and kind of rebellion we could do that's harder to do now that you're actually a part of Microsoft. But in terms of the relationship, it feels very, very similar. And the fact that we're up in Vancouver, so there's some distance, we act and treat ourselves very much as an independent studio. We introduce ourselves as the coalition, not, we're with Microsoft, right? So it feels very, very similar.
I think that's one of the things too, when you came, that has been one of the things that you've kind of driven a little bit, is bringing that independent developer feel to the studio. The whole get shit done initiative and the kind of cultural change around just being very pragmatic, being kind of scrappy and resourceful. Even though we're part of Microsoft, we don't want to ever feel like we're part of a 100,000 person company. We want to feel like we're a 200 person organization. And having some distance between us and Redmond definitely helps with that. And having Rod's perspective, having worked at Epic and knowing how things got done there, has definitely helped with that too.
For Gears 1, I was employee number 63, right? We did a lot with very little to get Gears 1 out the door. Yeah. And that was just one of the things when I came in, I just felt like one of the things I wanted to get across was like, don't be a big corporation. Don't settle for red tape. Don't settle for, I haven't filled out that paperwork or whatever. It was like, and so that's where we started the GSD initiative, which was this idea of get shit done, which is act like entrepreneurs, find ways to solve problems instead of relying on, someone told me it's a 3-week process. How do you fix that? Like, how do you get past that? And so it's something now we hand out awards and we give out GSD t-shirts about people who are finding ways to operate at a higher efficiency because they're acting in a non-corporate way.
Do you see that as Rod's specialty? Like, I think he kind of got this reputation after moving over to BioShock Infinite to like, let's close this down, let's ship this.
Right.
Do you see yourself as the closer? Like, is that what he's like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where he's in his element, from what I see. He likes that environment, the high pressure, late nights. But it's all about, we're not in kind of theoretical planning mode anymore. We're not talking about what if scenarios. We just got to get it done. We got to get it done right now. And it's about making quick decisions and then acting on those decisions like instantaneously, bang, 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 bang. And yeah, that's where Rod is sort of shining for sure. Yeah, and that's where he seems happiest. Even when he's most tired and grumpy and his blood sugar is low, he's actually pretty happy.
It's actually my favorite thing. Although it's been interesting here to be, as the vision holder for the product here, like I'm actually doing less of that now. And so it's one of the great things about having a director of production with Walter and the production team is that there are times now where I go like, look, as a producer, I would have certain thoughts, but I'm not that right now, so here's what I want. And I would just give them the big creative thing, and I'd watch them all sweat and go like, I don't know how we're gonna do that with this much time left. And I'm like, it's not my concern. I'm telling you what I want, and it's your job to tell me whether I can do it or not mine. And they were like, okay. And so it's been an interesting, an Ultimate Edition, being part of that and helping Mike with that, and as Mike shut that down, and then as we've been focusing on demos and shutting down the E3 demo and the demo that you just saw, those are, again, I love that aspect of a project, but it's been really fun to be at a high creative level and pushing for what's possible and what's awesome as opposed to like what's within budget.
Is it tough to like give up control? Since you do see Gears as a very personal baby for you for all those years, is it tough
when I do that, then it'll be tough.
Very theoretical.
I know. When I eventually give up control, I will worry about that. There's a little bit of truth to that, but not. No, I mean, part of it is, it's one of those things where the team had to learn to trust me because like, I come in and I'm heavily opinionated, and they have done things a certain way, and there's certain beliefs they have in what they're doing, and I came in going, not completely trusting them because like I said, a lot of things were different and they were trying to do different things with it. So we had to come to a mutual appreciation of what each other's differences. And it's been easy to set a high level direction and watch the team execute it with great finesse and drive new and innovative things. And so that's the awesome part is that, when I walk away from an art review and go like, I have no worries about this game not looking good. And when I see a gameplay reviews and see where we're going with the gameplay, it's just having something that everybody can rally towards. And that's what I'm focused on is like, what are the big goals? So they can focus on the small stuff, and they're doing a great job.
So with the rename, it's kind of implied, but is this a Gears-only studio moving forward?
It is, yeah.
Wow.
That was the big thing.
We're all in.
We're all in. It's all Gears of War all the time.
Was there an option to keep it loose and maybe you could work on smaller projects as well, or?
No, Gears is a big enough thing that honestly, we don't want to split the team across multiple things. We want to go all in on Gears and make sure we deliver on that.
Yeah, and there may be a way to expand the franchise and the brand beyond just a AAA console title. So, but we're going to live within the Gears of War franchise. Doesn't mean we're only going to work on one game, but it just means we're within this franchise. And it seemed to, it felt like when we look at Turn 10 with Forza and we look at 343 with Halo, it just felt like we wanted people to go like, oh, I got a job offer from the Coalition, then that means I'm going to go work on Gears of War. I know what I'm going to go do, and I think it's really important to have that. I want people coming here who want to work on Gears of War. I don't want them coming going like, boy, I hope I get to work on a free-to-play mobile game. Like, that's not why you're here. Yeah. So if that's what you're here to do, then you shouldn't be here, right? And so I felt like aligning the name was a way to make sure that everybody had that singleness of purpose,
And as a studio, there's no safety net. I mean, we have to deliver Gears.
It's true.
Yeah. So
thanks for
how
that.
Much?
Oh no! All right, just don't touch the pods.
So how are you guys feeling at this point? I mean, we're getting close to release here.
Well, you just saw it. What did you think?
I liked what I saw. How are you feeling about it,
I'm rocking back and forth for a reason. No, we're good. I mean, the studio's buzzing right now. We're hitting into that part of the project where it really is like I call it the bars are coming down on the roller coaster. and we all just kind of
I'm
have
glad you said roller coaster, by the way. I thought there was a prison thing going on there. I'm glad the bars became roller coaster
Nobody
safety
can
bars.
leave before 9 p.m. Yeah, it's going to be an intense spring and summer for the team here, for sure. But, everybody's 100% committed to getting the game done. I think people are super excited to see what it's looking like right now and to kind of envision now what it's going to look like in a number more months. Yeah, we're just going to get it done.
I mean, I was telling the team, when I look at what, this is probably my fourth time doing a campaign preview. I was telling them, like, this is the best any preview ever looked that I've ever done. Like, I've never done a preview that looks this good and is this real. Like, a lot of times when you do this sorts of previews, you're trying to golden path certain things, or and like, that was our game. So I'm feeling really bullish. Like, I feel really good about where we are with the game, and now it's not about sort of execution, it's just about time. Like, now that the clock is ticking, we're into, we're down to months instead of years, and so that is always a stress about, okay, now we know very clearly we know what we want to build, now we just got to find the time to do it.